Yep.
All right. Uh, Good evening and welcome to yet another program of your favorite platform, The Common Good. Tonight, we're going to discuss another interesting burning issue that is confronting Africa. And not only Africa as, not Africa, only Africa in general, but with specific countries as well, which of course includes the Gambia. And the topic to be discussed tonight is Chinese involvement in Africa, the pros and the cons. With me tonight, I have colleagues from all over the world. Uh, First is Madam Elizabeth Bass, all the way from Louisville in the United States. And I also have Mr. Bakari Ba out there in Birmingham, United Kingdom. And my humble self, Mohammed X Tikani, here in the city of New York, United States of America. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Um, you getting me, ladies and gentlemen?
Yes, thank you, Tex. We're hearing you loud and clear. Is Paos with us too?
Your powers will be behind the scenes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was like, you gotta introduce him too. Okay, I get it. Yeah, good evening to our viewers. It's another program. We are glad to come your way with this very important topic, Chinese involvement in the Gambia, and in Africa in general. We want to look at how their interest in Africa and in our country in particular impacts us. What are the benefits for us? What are the things that we need to watch out for? What are examples out there that we have to, look at and learn from? How do we want to hold our government's feet to the fire to ensure that their interests or their investments and whatever they come with becomes, a win-win situation for us, so that we are not exploited. And that is why I think this topic is very important, because as a country we have seen Chinese interest, we have seen Chinese investments, and a lot is done behind the scene we do not know. And I think it's about time we begin to ask those hard questions, because we have seen what's happening around the world, and that is what we're about to discuss here. And we are glad to come your way, and hopefully it's going to be an interesting program.
Thank you very much, Madam Elizabeth Bass. And to you, Mr. Bakariba.
Good evening, Brother Tex. Good evening, Sister Elizabeth. Good evening to all our viewers. Assalamu alaikum for Lenyumundi Setane. Coming from our way, the Common Good platform. It's an interesting subject we want to take on today and discuss. We did our little research. Hopefully, we'll share it with our esteemed viewers. Like the joke says, if people want to say something is not, they want to say made in China. So hopefully the program wouldn't be made in China, but we would dwell more on about this joke of made in China. Happy to be on this platform. Looking forward for a very fruitful discussion. And greetings, everyone.
Thank you very much, Bakari. And to the viewers, I would like to outline how the program tonight will be structured. First, we'll have a segment that will discuss about the pros of Chinese involvement in Africa. In this, we know that every interaction or every association or involvement, there are positives and as well negatives. And it's good to always start with the positives before we get to the negatives. So the first segment will be a 40 minutes discussion about the positives of Chinese involvement in Africa. What is their involvement doing in advancing the status of the African continent and the Gambia as a country and the people of Africa? And also, what has the Chinese involvement brought in terms of infrastructural development and all those stuff? Thereafter, we'll have a short break of 5 to 10 minutes where we'll invite callers that will contribute to what has been discussed. And that will be followed by the second segment. And the second segment will be a discussion of the negative impacts that Chinese involvement in Africa has brought to Africa as a continent, Gambia as a country, and Africans as a people. There we will discuss on the negative impacts and as well, see what modalities or what, things that us Africans and, our continent can do to minimize the impacts of Chinese involvement in Africa, the negative impacts. And it will then be followed by a 5-10 minutes call time that, callers will call to discuss ways of minimizing the negative effects of Chinese involvement in Africa, and as well give in their recommendations towards improving or reducing the effects. And we will then end the program with a review of what had been discussed, and as well give recommendations to our country, the Gambia, and also to the African continent and Africans as a people on ways of maximizing the benefits of our relationship with China and minimize the negative impacts, that is the risk. So to start with, the said ladies first. Wherever we go is always ladies first. So we're going to start with Madam Elizabeth. Madam Elizabeth, of recent, about few days ago, 3 or 4 days ago, we have seen African leaders converge in Beijing, the capital city of China, to discuss about the ways of strengthening the Sino-Africa cooperation, which is the relationship between China and Africa. And it has shown that in the discussion they've discussed about the ways of implementing the Belt and Road Initiative that China wants to expand to Africa. What do you think, or what is your take about this meeting, and what do you think Africans should expect to gain from this meeting? Are you getting me, Elizabeth?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that article that you just quoted, I think when you look at it, it talked about the fact that China is looking at a win-win kind of cooperation with Africa, and they are wanting to ensure that infrastructures are built. In fact, they have what they call the Belt and Road Initiative, where they are looking at building roads and railways connecting the continent, country to country. And I think that in itself is a good thing. I think it should be welcome. And if that materializes, then it should open up the continent so that, trade can be between countries in Africa. Whereas when we do not have these infrastructures in place, it just limits us as a people to where we are not able to trade with each other and all that. But that being said, well, we're still looking at the positives, and I think the Nigerian rep and the Zambian rep in that meeting spoke extensively about the benefits and how this cooperation, unlike other cooperations that they had with the West, is gonna be of great benefit to the continent. So that is said, but like I said, I have my buts and ifs when it comes to what is being said and what we are seeing in reality. But again, the Road and Belt Initiative, I think if it materializes, it will be of great benefit to the continent.
Yeah, and part of, thank you very much, Madam Elizabeth. During the meeting as well, the Chinese leader made mention that, they won't be like, the Western world, where, their investments will be directly, will take direct involvement into the political situations of nations that they are involved in, and also the running of countries like that. Don't you think that also is a positive with regards to their involvement in Africa? Like if the West wants to involve in Africa, but not only investing in Africa, but they want to dictate or direct how African countries should manage what they do. Sorry, welcome, Mr. Flex. Welcome to the program. It's good to have you here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate. It's great to be with all of you. I see some of my fellow panelists. And yes, it's always a pleasure to be with my brothers and sisters.
Thank you very much. So back to Elizabeth. I was saying that, when you look at the Western, investment in Africa, let's say, for example, Europe, they dictate how, the funds or the grants and loans are to be used or utilized in Africa. But the Chinese, on the other way around, are saying that they are not into, deciding what, African governments or countries should do, but instead they want to develop a strong partnership to ensure that Africa gets connected the way Europe and Asia is been. So don't you think that alone is also another good, thing about Chinese-Africa relationship?
Obviously that's a positive, that's a good thing, because the truth is, yeah, we do not see China being involved in the day-to-day political affairs of the continent as we see our European counterparts do. That's a positive thing in itself. But like I said, not being involved in the politics and the day-to-day runnings of the country is one thing, but then when we go to the flip side of things, we would also see how the conditions and terms under which these projects are granted or the loans are granted affect Africa in a not very good way. So yes, the sovereignty of Africans and Africa should be respected. When you give us loans, that doesn't mean that you should dictate how we eat and how we lay down and how we run our nations. And we give China should be given and should be recognized for that aspect of not interfering in our sovereignty. And it's a positive thing, and I think it goes back to Africans and our leaders. We should be able to dictate or negotiate on terms that are best to our best interest. So whether it's China or it's the West, when these loans are given, they should not be in such a way that it will be determining how much they'll get involved in our affairs. So we should set the pace when it comes to those things. But like you said, it's a good thing, it's a welcome thing, and I hope that is also transferred to our Western counterparts, that when it comes to these loans, yes, we would take the loans, but then that doesn't mean that you would have to dictate how we run our nations. So yeah, that's my take on that.
Thank you very much. And to Mr. Flex. Flex, we've seen an increasing, investment of Chinese economy to Africa. And this, they said, they want to connect Africa as a continent and, to ensure that, Africa develops and, pursues other continents in terms of development and, other stuff. And, a few research I have made mention that there is the increasing investment in Africa is being characterized by a lot of gains towards Africa. It says that back in 1980, Chinese investment in Africa was about $1 billion US, but in 2013 it registered about $85 billion US investment in Africa. And it says in 2016, there is currently roughly about $210 billion US investment in Africa. Do you think this increase in investment in Africa is meant to do good for Africa, or do you think it is because of the increasing interest Chinese have in Africa with regards to what Africa has in raw that will benefit them?
Thank you very much. The way you put the question is very interesting, and but I think if we take a step back and look at other countries who China is dealing with, it's also very, very a good marker to understand this investment, where it might lead us onto. Other countries have been dealing with China. Sri Lanka is one such country.
Okay.
And unfortunately, they gave away their port to China. A whole port given away. Yeah. Right now, Zambia is also another country that might give away their airport
Yeah,
to
but
China.
I'm sorry. Currently, we want to discuss about the positive involvement of China in Africa, and thereon we will
Yeah,
discuss about the negative effects that they have in
yeah.
Africa.
So because of the question you ask is this increased investment and what
Okay.
positives is it bringing for Africa?
Yeah.
And that's what I fail to see. I don't think that these positives are for Africa. They are for China. China is investing in increasing its footprint outside the globe. So
Yeah.
all these positives, they actually are helping China because China is a country with a big population and needs to offload. And there is too much competition inside China. So its citizens need to expand outside. And a lot of its business people need to they need a support of the Chinese government. And so what happens, they go and spread their business tentacles in other countries. So that's what we are seeing economically, that's happening, spreading across. So I do believe that these positives, they may look like they are positives for Africa, because the reason why I say I don't see positives, the fishing right now, people who are having to spend a lot of money and compete with the fishing industry, they are struggling, and they are not going to tell you that they are having a very good time to buy fish.
Yeah,
So,
just a
but
follow-up to what you have just said. Yes, there are some the positives that China, is bringing to Africa could be more on Chinese side. But don't you think also China in China's involvement in Africa, like bringing technology to Africa, as in our country that recently, not long ago, that they coming, they working on getting technology readily available for the Gambian people. And also China is, exporting chemicals to Africa. It's also developing infrastructure in Africa. Don't you think that also is a positive, gain for Africa?
yeah, that sounds like a positive, but when you listen to what United States Senate mentioned with
Yeah,
regards to weaponizing infrastructure. So
yeah,
what happens is infrastructure can be weaponized and
yeah,
used against the very countries which they seem that they are helping. So these are things which are very complex, and it doesn't seem like when you look at the long term, there is a benefit, and this is where it's all going towards. And even in the short term, but I mean, I will listen to some of the other people who maybe have some positives to give, because I think when we say if they're not interfering about in Gambian politics, that's where again I feel a little bit different, because they are interfering in Gambian politics. The Gambian way of life, they are changing it, because of what happens is when they come in, they know who to talk to and who to influence. You will see they will go with the Alcalos or the chiefs. Yeah, that's why a lot of times when we have problems in Gambia, what happens? Who do the people go to? Usually, they will go to the local chief, isn't it? And if there was a problem with one of the local chiefs, they burn their
yeah.
houses. You see? So this is the issue right now. So it will go to a few people, and I feel they are really interfering in our political life, because of they are very close with the president, and
Yeah.
they are very close with some of the top leaders. But I think we'll get to that eventually when
All
the
right. Thank you
discussion.
very much. Reading from the comment section on our Facebook page, Kandege is saying, "Well done, guys. You all doing a great job." And Farmer Fati says, "Keep it up. You are doing a great job." Amadou says that uh, Amadou says, "Farmer, welcome." And Musa Baji is saying, "Great." And Farmer Fati says, "Thanks, Arms." And Kadi Kotli says communism comes with China and they just want Africa resource. And Modu Drame is saying, "Thanks, Amaro. This is a very good platform and it's very educative." And Kidi Kotley also comment again. She said, EOC says, China is running out of resources, so Africa is easy to manipulate. And Musa Baji is saying Gambia don't need it and loans. All we need is competent leader. And Sajo Tamba is saying good work, guys. And Futi Juf is saying it's good for the Chinese to invest in Africa. But the problem is that 99% of that loan benefit the Chinese. The only thing we have is structure and not even the know-how. Thank you, guys. Keep the comments coming. We'll follow it up. And to Mr. Bakariba, you've heard what Madam Elizabeth has said with regards to, Chinese Africa involvement or cooperation, and Mr. Flex also elaborated on the relationship between China and Africa. What do you think are the immediate positives for Africa as a continent and the Gambia, our country, as a country, and our people specific with regards to our relationship with China? We've had pledges that Chinese government has made, towards the development of Gambia, towards the realization of our national development blueprint. What do you think are the immediate gains?
Thank you, brother Dr. Tex. And also we just want to say so our brother Flex that might join us. It's a pleasure having you on. Like us, Elizabeth and brother Flex said, if we are honest, I think we would have a little of positive say on this program, and then most of it will be on the negative. But not to try to be a party pooper, I'm struggling to find some positives in terms of the relationship between Africa and China, because we can sit here until tomorrow and talk about the benefits that China weighs into it. But the little benefits that Africa, if they are smart, if our leaders are smart with our dealings with China, we could kind of like gain in terms of technology development, because right now China is rapidly growing in terms of technology. And the other thing is with China is you can get some expertise knowledge from there, and they always tend to like to do things quickly. So for example, their way of investing is not too bureaucratic compared to the Western way of investing in Africa, where there is strings attached. That, in a way, have more of a negativity. But if you got a leader who is smart in his business dealings, who is smart in his negotiation, so if there is a short-term problem that needs to be fixed, China could be the solution if the dealings are like done in a smart and in a way that benefits the entire population of that country. But looking into it more, as Felix says, the end game is always with China. They are good with infrastructure development, and to be quite honest, Africa needs that infrastructure. And then once we've got that infrastructure in place, we've got the technology, then what we Africans, particularly again, we Gambians can do is not to be lazy. Because if you look at China in the last 30 years, they were an emerging country, they were an emerging developing country. Now they are the second biggest economy in the world. So that is something to learn from them. But their advantage is they've got a massive population compared to other countries. But they are very hardworking. They are very patriotic to their countries. They always give back to what takes their countries forward. But I think when we get to the part of the cons, that's where, we would all elaborate on. So there is a little to celebrate in this, which is i.e. the infrastructure, the technology that they would come with, and they can be easily dealt with in terms of a relationship compared to, like, for example, if UK wanted to invest in the Gambia, you've got the cabinet to deal with in the UK here, you've got the parliament to deal with, and you've got all other lobby groups. Where in China, it's mostly like how Africa operates. It's key people that makes those key decisions. So sometimes that can be beneficial, but it have a long-term consequences into such things and dealings. So I think I don't have any much more to think of to add into value of what China brings into Africa apart from those three. Thank you.
Yeah, so you're saying that for Africa to get more benefits from its cooperation with China, it needs smart leaders like Paul Kagame and the others that will know that that will know how to get good from this cooperation. And I'm quite sure, if we get good leaders and, very smart ones like Kagame and the others, we can benefit a lot from them and get a lot of infrastructure. So that's a very, good contribution. And back to Madam Elizabeth. Madam Elizabeth, when we look at this cooperation with regards to, China and Africa, like the loans, for example, I do not think the Chinese loans to Africa are as tight as how Western loans like EU loans are to Africa. What do you think with regards to Africa's benefits with regards to Africa?
Honestly, the loans that we get from the West, the conditions that come with it are not the best. I mean, we can do way, way, way better when it comes to the conditions that are tied to it, the interest that we have to pay to them and all the other things that that can be looked at. But again, China's system is not the best either. I mean, I don't want to stick on this thing. China has a barter system where they give you these loans, and then if you default in loans, they take your infrastructures from you, like our brother was saying. So yes, we can do better when it comes to loans and their agreements with either the West or with the Chinese. But again, like you said, it depends on what our leaders. Oh my God. I thought, okay, sorry guys, I thought my network was messing up. So, I mean, it depends on what kind of leaders we have and how much, how smart they act. Because even this 60 billion that's been given, according to the Chinese and their policy on it, it's that they want to develop local economic capacity. That's what they want to do. So let's see how much that is translated. Let's see how much our nations, Gambia holds China to that. So when you go for these loans, remind them what do they mean? What do you mean you will develop local, economic capacity? It's just not, giving, cash and then on a barter system where even the money that comes in is not benefiting the people per se. It ends up in the pockets of certain individuals. But if we're able to, China is able to, show the world that in fact they are building local economic capacity with the loans that they are given, then that will be a good thing. That will be a positive thing. But I am yet to see, Chinese loan being translated into, economic building an economic capacity for our African nations. Now, take for instance, the Chinese they can do very well in modernizing our agricultural sector. We have the manpower. Africa has 25% of the world's population. If only China modernizes agriculture, take for instance in the Gambia, and we produce, and we will be a great producer. But then Chinese interest, I don't think, is much into modernizing our agricultural sector, where we are able to be self-sufficient and not depend on their rice that they import to us. So it just depends again on how we negotiate, how our governments act smart enough to hold them to these things that they are putting forward, especially with this 60 billion, where they're saying it is meant for to build the economic capacity of the African nations. So let's see how that is translated. But like Bakari said, I am yet to see anywhere where these investments have directly resulted in an economic boost for our countries. I think the road and railway thing that they were talking about, the would be a great thing in helping build our capacity if that materializes. But again, like one of the commenters said the viewers said, these monies end up in the pockets of individuals instead of them being used to build infrastructures or to build and modernize our agriculture, to industrialize Africa, where our human capacity is used maximally.
And that is to say that
If I
what
can
Bakari
add to
said is
that,
that, yeah, that is to
I
say
just
that what
wanted to
Bakari
add
said is
a
about,
positive
sorry.
also.
Oh, yes,
I
please.
just wanted to I just
Yeah.
wanted to add a positive there, because I think, for example, when you look, China is one of the main producers when it comes to this solar, PVC, and a lot of these renewable technology. For example, Gambia could collaborate with them. Even right now, Aecon is trying to light up Africa, and that is being powered by Chinese companies. You see, this is an area where our government, for example, could collaborate with them so that they can maybe bring a solar factory in Gambia. Because if we are going to be using solar and using renewable energy, then we will need these materials, we will need them consistently. And then we can have young people who are trained to maintain these things. Because once you have these things and it's going well, I mean, I don't think Gambia will have a problem with sunlight. So that way we can reduce the amount of energy that we are spending and money that we are spending on fossil fuels. So there are positives, but then again, whether our leaders are willing to engage some of these ideas, because you have to think long term. You know, when you bring, for example, solar factory, you're going to be using it for a long time, you know, and people will need parts when things break, and these things you will need to replace them, and you get them going. That's jobs. If that factory is being employing young people, you know, what about the young people who are going to be maintaining those goods across the country? That's unemployment, you know. But whether we have the leaders to think beyond that, it's not just, oh, we have a factory, nice. But that factory, what is it doing? How many Gambians is it employing? We don't want it to employ Chinese people only, you see. And then not only that, what's the knock-on effect? How many young people now are, maybe they have their own small business in Farafenni, in Banjul. You can have a small business in every constituency of Gambia, of young people going around maintaining solar, you know, equipment in people's households. There you go, employment for the young people. But whether our government are really thinking like this is something else, and I think, yeah.
Yeah, and to those joining us now, this is your favorite platform, The Common Good, and the discussion tonight is about Chinese involvement in Africa, the goods of their involvement and the negatives of their involvement in Africa. And the panelists are Mr. Flex Dan in the United Kingdom, Mr. Bakari Ba in the United Kingdom, Madam Elizabeth Bass in the United States, and my humble self. And just a follow-up to what Elizabeth and Flex has said, it goes to what Bakari said, that we need smart leaders in Africa. Leaders that will not just be there to sign everything that the Chinese, put on the table. Leaders that will know that if we do sign for this, it may be, bring stuff that generations to come will struggle to get out. And it all, gets to the point of being smart on what to sign and what not to sign, and whatever is being signed to be something that will bring more benefits to Africa than to China, or equal wins for both. To Flex, I want to say, don't you think Chinese involvement in Africa, in terms of human resource development, is also a gain to Africa than China? Because if you look at it, the literacy wise in China cannot be compared to that of Africa. But Chinese involvement in Africa comes with scholarships. They come with training programs. It comes with, capacity building and all those stuff. Is that not again to Africa when, we strengthen our relationship with them, the Chinese? Like, when they provide, when they provide scholarships and all those stuff to our people, is it not a benefit to us?
Yeah, I think that definitely there are some benefits there with regards to learning, because of if we can have Gambians traveling to China and getting a good education there, these people are at top of the edge of technology, which we all know. They replicate, if even technology is moving very quickly elsewhere, they replicate it very quickly and they study it, they reverse engineer it, and they can copy it and even make it, sell it cheaper. So they know how to, they've really mastered the art when it comes to technology. But I want us to think about our way of questioning this and where we are engaging and thinking. I think from all evidence, it's China that's coming into Africa. They are the ones who are saying they're coming in. I think the question we should be asking is, what is China to gain from coming into Africa? instead of what are, isn't it a benefit for Gambians always? You see, and I think we really need to be thinking about that. What's it called? A little bit more. Because of, if, for example, if somebody leaves this house, you are in your house, and you leave your house and you come to my house, the first thing I'm going to be asking, what do you want? You know, when you knock on the door, that's the first thing you're going to ask, you know, and it's not usually the other one to say, oh, you know, you don't come just expecting that you're the one who's going to benefit. You expect the person who's come wants to get something. So I think we need to think again. And Africa is going into a neo-colonial. It's been a neo-colonial time for a long time. Europe has been within us. They've divided us because of you have francophones and anglophones. And so right now, we need to be very, very careful how further neo-colonized we want to become. Because China is also coming in. So we already have other people who have been in Africa for a long time, and they have been sitting here. They have refused to evacate. So I think Africa is under siege, really. We are a continent which is under siege, left, right, and center. South Africa right now is fighting to get their land back. Their land, 10% of the population, which is mostly the descendants of the Boers and the white people. I don't mean to be negative, but they are the ones who own over 80% of the land. This is the reality of Africa which we live in. Africa is in bondage, my brother. I think we really need to start we need to change the discussion. We need to think about how we're going about this, because this is not a case of where people are coming to give to Africa. I think we really, really must disband that notion entirely. That is not the situation. People are coming to take from Africa. They've been taken from Africa. And we need to be careful to make sure that what the little we have is protected. This is the mindset that the African needs to have, you know.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you know, in any relationship between two people, there is always onlookers some that will look good at, you know, the relationship, and others that will look for bad things. And in this China-Africa relationship, there are people out there looking at the relationship, most especially the Western, you know, mainstream media. And, you know, the thing that they talk to this is that, you know, China is out to exploit Africa, forgetting that the West had already exploited Africa and put, you know, Africa in huge trouble. So that is just to add, you know, some noise to the but Mr. John Mendy is saying that our main problem as Africans, I think, when it comes to development, is our leaders. And Mr. Lamin Tamba is saying great program. Candidate is saying, where is Paus? Paus is at the background. And Cow is saying that please call and contribute. Mr. John S. Mendy said, I'm really very proud of you guys. Keep it up. Modu Sise is watching. Futi Juve, thanks Mrs. Bars for the great point. And Lamin Fai, Samba Ba, and Aja Mbi Nyasi all watching. Thank you very much. And Futi is saying, thanks guys. This is very educative platform. Jangha Moha is saying, in that area, we need to be very careful with the fact that the Chinese, I don't know. Great point, you, and thank you very much. Keep it up. Keep following. And now, since there is no sign of a caller, I want us to, you know, twist, you know, flip the coin to the other side. We've spoken much about, you know, some positives with regards to relationship between Africa and China. And there's something I want to say before we move to the other side.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, I want to make a contribution. Paus.
Oh, all right. Welcome, welcome, Mr. Paus.
Yeah, thank you, and a good program. Well, before we move on to the next section, I just wanna give a bit of piece of what I know about the pros and cons. Well, the positive side of this thing, and I will agree with some of the things that has been said here, simply because the Chinese, in the short term, yes, Africa will gain and it will benefit Africa, this in the short term. And what we fail to realize is that it's good for countries like the Gambia or countries like, for example, Equatorial Guinea, because with these countries with bad human rights records, the Chinese will come in directly without putting into consideration your country's income and your country's ability to repay back a debt. So if you look at the Chinese, they are coming to give you the money because of you have a bad credit rating, you have a bad human rights record, because they give the money without considering what these things are. But the thing is, nowadays we see these Chinese people coming with their briefcases coming to give money. But in the future, we will see the same businessmen now coming back to Africa again, not to give money, but to take back their money. And in that case, what they're going to do, they're going to privatize these things and look, well, you can't pay me back, I'm going to get your port. You can't pay me back, I'm going to get your airport. So now it depends on the African leaders now to be very wise to make sure they are covered from the back end. And this means they determine the terms and conditions. They put down the strategy. They control the narratives. So if anything happens tomorrow, they are better prepared. But they just don't go like that. Yeah, we had a loan. Thank you. So let African leaders dictate the terms and conditions of this loan. Let them dictate who does what. When it comes to implementation, it becomes a 50-50 basis. Then we are all equal in this situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paus. But the Chinese will not, welcome, Madam Boss Lady. I think she has a contribution to make with regards to the program. Welcome, Madeline from the United Kingdom.
Thank you very much, and congratulations to you. It's a very, very educative platform. I think with myself, I see no positives actually from the Chinese investments. It's not even investments, because with the Chinese, they're into, what will I say? They're just into building infrastructure. They do not care about how Africans will maintain those infrastructure or have projects that will be able to, that will bring us income in order to pay back those loans. So the Chinese, they know what they are doing, because listening to Al Jazeera, the Chinese are giving us loans, but more than 50% of those loans are secured over some of our assets in Africa. So the Chinese know exactly that Africans will always default on their loans, because the West came in not with infrastructure, they came in with investments. So it means the West actually gave us money in order for that money to be invested and giving us income to repay those loans, and yet still we failed. How would we think we'll be able to achieve anything with money whereby, you know, you're going to put it onto roads and there's nothing to say we'll be able to bring anything from those roads to pay for those loans? So they're looking at us as it's a trap, because it's two ways. When you have a good credit rating, people look at your affordability before they give you money. When you have a poor credit rating, they don't care. They look for collaterals. So anybody who comes and asks you for collaterals, they know you are going to default. So the Chinese, they know what they're doing. They can't be saying, oh, we are coming to, Africa is struggling because of the West. The West used to micromanage Africans. They are right, because we have corrupt leaders. We have leaders who have no focus on investments. All they do is receive monies and put it into vanity projects, like just for their own names, because they want to promote their political agenda, which is wrong. That's why the West has to monitor us like babies. The Chinese don't care. They don't want to monitor you, because why? If you default, they're taking something from you. Who is here to lose? It's you. The Chinese will win. There is no win-win case between Africa and Chinese with me. For me, looking at what is going on, the Africans will constantly lose unless Africans, they themselves, go for leaders who are business-minded, who are focused, who have an objective and only the country at heart. Because the West were usually coming in for poverty relief. Where were the Chinese when we needed them for poverty relief? The West are the ones doing researches on malaria, researches on polio. Where was China? China was nowhere to be found, because they knew they were not going to get anything out of it. But this time they know Africa is now developed, because they know that Africans have gone out to study, so it's likely that those Africans will come back to develop Africa. their natural resources in Africa, what will they do? They will try to set a trap so that in 20 years' time you can't escape the trap. So that is all that the Chinese are doing to Africans, because they know we are myopic, we have no focus, we have no long-term objective, and they're exploiting it. Will you blame them? No. They're taking advantage. When you're an investment broker, you look at the market shares. When they drop, boom, you buy. If they hold on to them and wait, when they go up, you sell and get your profit. And that's exactly what China is doing. They're investing now to trap us. In 20 years' time, we will be crying. I'm sorry,
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Madeline. But it looks like you biased because you live in the West, and you tend to be biased. I'm joking. On the comments.
No, that's a point though, Tex. That's a point. I think she's a
sure
little
it
biased
is.
because the loans that we get
It
from the
is.
West, there's a lot that you can say about it that's not pleasant.
Thank you.
In fact, statistics out there tell us that most of that money that they give us actually go back to them. So, I mean, the
Yeah.
West has buts and ifs. And that is why I am in agreement with Sidia Jatta when he said in the National Assembly all the time that we need to get to a point where we are not depending on loans. We need to get to a point where we are producers. Our raw materials, let us add value to it. Let's not be selling raw material. We need to be self-sufficient. We cannot depend on loans. All these people, whether it's the West, whether it's the Chinese, wherever they are coming from, I mean, it's about them first before us. And all of them, so these people, they are after their own selfish interest first before they can even ever think of us if they do. So at the end of the day, it's about our leaders. It's about us as a continent knowing what we want and how to go about what we need to get. Now, I think that most of the time it's just laziness, it's just greed, it's selfishness of our leaders, because they take these monies. It's cash. They put it in their pockets. But if they were interested in the development of our countries, they would have requested that instead of these loans coming and building infrastructures that we probably do not have, need of right away, why not build our capacity? Why not train our youths? Look at the Golden Lead factory. Why do we have to have Chinese running that factory? What is the technology in the factory that our youths, our country, we cannot run as a country? If Chinese are really interested in the betterment of Gambia, a company like Golden Lead, what they will do is let them train our young people to run and man that factory. Let us be the ones exporting those fish meals. But our leaders are too lazy. They are corrupt. They only want the money. You give them $1 billion or $1 million to lease a whole sea for 40 years, and then the Chinese continue to exploit and run and run. What do we gain from there? Nothing. So at the end of the day, we might blame the Chinese, we might blame the West, but we are our own problem. We are hindering ourselves. Our leaders are greedy and selfish, and unless as a people we come out of our myopic views that Madeline was talking about, of tribalism, that this is my tribe, this is my day, I'm going to vote for this because of my tribe, and look at competent leaders who will take us through, then we will continue to be backward and be talking about Africa, China and the West exploiting us every time.
Thank you very much. And I will borrow Honorable Salah's favorite words. That is, we need to develop our own sovereign wealth and develop our country from the sovereign wealth. So I want to read the comments. Mr. Spice Jada said a very enlightened platform. And John S. Mendy is saying, exactly, that's true. We are getting to be colonized again. And Mr. Nicholas Bass is saying that I do not trust the Chinese. If they give us 5%, they take 95%. Africa needs to start doing the things on their own way. And Nicholas Bass is saying again that very good point per us. John S. Mendy is saying that it could be good. It could be good to the Gambia, but we need to deal with them with awareness. And Nicholas was asking for Madeline. She is here. And Alas there is saying that China is only interested for our resources. Our leaders have to open their eyes. Thank you very much and welcome to the program. Keep it up. So we need to go to the other side of the argument. And the other side of the argument is, what are the negative impacts of Chinese involvement in Africa? There are huge negative impacts that affects us as a people, affects our continent, as our countries, and our continent. What are the how can we reduce the impacts of those? How best can we do to ensure that our leaders sign for the right things that will reduce the impacts on our people and our continent? Mr. Bakariba, your turn.
Thank you very much, brother doctor. And sitting down here myself, I'm learning a lot. It's very informative, it's very educative and engaging. So well done to our panelists. You've asked a very strategic question here, which we have to keep on asking. And the negative impact of China into Africa is huge, not just for the long term, short term, but also for the long term. But before I even touch on that, it all comes down to leadership and doing their homework and being due diligent and being smart and putting country first before filling their pockets. Because if you're doing a business deal, or if you're doing a deal between a country and a country, or between a company on a bilateral agreement, you have to do your homework by doing a risk assessment. And most of all these African leaders, they just tend to sign what is in front of them, because at the moment their eyes were popping with the figures without looking into the long-term consequences of putting that signature in a pen and a paper. Because what happens is we vote these incompetent leaders and they come and sign agreements, or they make decisions which we would pay for, our children's generation would pay for, and our grandchildren. So the impact of Africa, China in Africa, can be looked at three ways: economically, politically, and environmentally. And any of these three, you've touched them, you've opened a can of worms, because what the Chinese do is everything about them is quick fix. That's what they normally say: Chinese bagas do bagas. Yeah, they come in, they want to fix things quickly, they go their way. We tend to benefit in that little part, but then the damage or the footprint they leave behind them, we face with that for generations to come. I can name you some African countries today, like Zambia, Brother Flex just said. Their national airport, we're talking about their national airport, might be taken over by China. So now, these are examples which our leaders should look into, should learn from. Look at the investment of even the Chinese people in the Gambia. I call them briefcase investors, because everything they do is in that briefcase. They come with the dollar bills, they've come with their contracts. While they're giving you to sign that contract, dollar bills is lying on the table there. They're tempting you. So they are briefcase investors. They're there for the quick fix, grab it, go. We've got something that we offer in the Chinese. That's why they are coming, as some of the panelists said. We've got raw material. We are imagining continent in terms of economy. So everybody is scrambling. So now, just look at the golden leaf, for example, in the Gambia. Right now, even in terms of employment, they're bringing their own people. Yeah? And they're damaging the environment. So what is happening in Gunjur now, Gunjurians and Gambians could face this long-term consequences for 100 years to come. So what have we benefited from that golden leaf? It's absolutely nothing. Who signed those contracts? Why are these people in our country? And you know what? What really wound me up, not even for the long term, was when they had the audacity to put their national flag in our sovereign land at a beach, not at their embassy, not on their official car. That was utter arrogance. And what has been done? Are we Africans brave enough even to drop a trust in China? You'll be locked up. Much more for these people to have the audacity to put their national flag at the Gunjur beach in the Gambia. So that's the economic, that's the environment. If you look at the economy, we've seen lots of countries, not just Africa. You look at Bangladesh, other continents in Asia. China is there to exploit the weak and the poor. Yeah, with poor leadership. That's what they're doing. There is no benefit for us there, except like few countries. As in Ghana, the president just recently said, if the Chinese think they're going to have it easy, wait until he gets back to his country. That's John Gafford of Ghana. Even the Chinese premier, he went to Senegal, our nearest neighbor. They're involved in that new city building, Jamnyadjo. But we don't hear all these issues we've seen in the Gambia in terms of Chinese involvement in Senegal or in countries like Ghana or even Rwanda. So it all boils down to the leadership. If we don't have the right leaderships dealing with these Chinese people or talking on our behalf, then we are doomed. So I would just give some people to come and add up their tools, and I'll come back later.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bakari. A quick research I made stated that, because of the increasing legislation of, the protection to, the ecosystem, and specifically the land, in China, many companies are running away from, investment in China to Africa, where the regulations are not, as strict as how it is becoming in Africa, in China. And I've also found out that about 2,500 Chinese companies are in existence in Africa. And, of this, it was raised to the Chinese leader about, the effect of Chinese companies in Africa. He said, Chinese companies need to abide by the laws and regulations of Chinese companies, of African countries towards, the way they work. But the question I have for Mr. Flex is that with this that we found how this that I've just said about the increasing presence of Chinese companies in Africa, and the naive laws that we have in Africa with regards to the protection of our environment, our ecosystem, and also with the increasing legislation in China, what do you think this Chinese presence in Africa is doing to our people, to our continent, to our environment, like Gunjur, like Sanyang, like these coastal villages that we see what their presence is doing in Africa? What do you think?
Yeah, thank you very much for raising up this very crucial topic. Now, this is such an important topic, and I've been so busy on this, the environment, Katong, Gunjur. I've been chasing it. I've been chasing it until I'm tired. But we can't stop. We have to keep going. It's unfortunate. We got hand of reports, which we published on Gynaco News. If anybody wants to get information on environmental pollution, go on Gynaco News. We published reports of a water assessment, and unfortunately, our waters have toxic, carcinogenic in there, which means that if people drink those water, some of the water, they can get cancer. And this does not clear. Now, the fact of the matter is, it's profitable to beat environmental regulations because that means you spend less. That's why those companies that want to beat environmental legislations by leaving China, they're coming to Africa. If you go and look at some of the case studies of some of these areas in China where they didn't have any respect for the environment, and you see what you see there, it's a nightmare. It's like something from you won't believe it. You will not believe what you are seeing. How these people polluted in China. That's why China is going very hard now to protect what it has left. Now, we are already seeing it happening in Gunjur, in Katong, all these people, the golden lead and the pollution that they're doing. And they pollute indiscriminately because of they are taking tankers and they are pouring the waste elsewhere into some other towns. And we've got articles about all of this. This was a huge issue. But I want to highlight something. China is coming and they are taking care of their own side, end of the bargain. They're not here to, it's not like they're here to just develop Gambia or develop Africa, clearly. So us, the Africans, we need to know what we're getting out of this. And that's where you made some mention of some good leaders, who are taking advantage of this and who are using this to, Bakari, my brother, made very good cases, Ghana and Senegal, but we also need to look at Africa. If we can just slow down for a minute and look at Djibouti, is very much on the other side of Gambia. If we look at Africa as a continent, Yeah, Gambia is a very strategic position on the west coast of Africa. If you can imagine the African continent in front of me, and on Djibouti is on this side. So as a location for trade, we have a river. That is why we are strategic. If you dock in Gambia, United States is not far, UK is not far. For trade, Gambia needs to know its value and its worth. Djibouti is on the other side. And why I'm raising up Djibouti? Djibouti has China and the United States in there right now. And they both have military bases. Military bases. Now, this is something that we should be very concerned about. They are actually having some few standoffs because there was an article published in the New York Times about lasers being pointed to the United States Embassy from China. Now, this is why we need to be careful if we succeed our land to China and the US. We don't want them to, these two elephants grappling on our land or on the continent. And in fact, the way I see it, if I'm China and the United States, they would prefer, if anything was to play out, an African continent for African souls. What's the value? So now this is the end of my contribution, and I'm so grateful that you guys added me onto this discussion. But I wanted to highlight, I'm reading this book. It's Pan-Africanism. Okay. And colleagues, we as Africans, we need to really be aware of our history. Yeah, it didn't just start here. This book talks about the struggles of Marcus Garvey, who tried to unite Africa. It talks about the struggles of Africans, how they divided us up, how they made sure that as we are right now, there are so many processes that we as Africans need to come together. We are divided along Anglophones, Francophones, currency. We still cannot have one currency. So we need to come together and bring back what we have and take back what we have, which is the only thing which we have is our land. Once we get our land, we need to use our land and our resources. We don't want to sit down and in the future, they've taken all the fish, they've pumped all the oil, and then they will leave us because there's nothing else to gain. So let's avoid that situation and let us take what we have as Africans. Thank you very much for the opportunity to join you, and for Bakari, Tex, and my dear sister Elizabeth, and all the contributors.
Thank you very much, Flex. It's been a very wonderful interaction, and you've made very excellent contributions, especially with regards to the divide and rule that the Western empowers have made in Africa, which is the cause of all these problems that we continue to have. And to those that are just following, this is another program of your favorite platform, The Common Good. And the discussion tonight is with regards to Chinese involvement in Africa, the goods of their involvement in Africa and the negatives of their involvement in Africa. Many will say that their involvement, increasing involvement in Africa, is a negative or is a risk to Africa's development. But others also will say it is meant to improve or increase the status of Africa. That is open for people to debate about. And on the comment section, Mr. Spice Jatta said, how about you bring a topic to enlighten the electorates on how we engage on electing our leaders, because I believe as we need a competent leader to lead us, it is equally we need in enlightening our electorates or conscious electorates. Tamjiba is saying absolutely. Kaubalde is saying, I will look into your suggestion. Thank you. Futi Juve is saying, exactly, sister. They have to be very careful, but one thing, they have to be very careful before they sign the loan. And Ibrahim Sise is saying, my friend, You talk too much. You talk too much. Can you come and help us, please? One Gambia, same people. Of course, we will come and help. Thank you. Yero Sabali is saying, great move, guys. And one of the admin is saying, Mister, this is not just about Gambia, it's Africa's problem. That's what the topic is about. And Ture Lamin is saying, what should the Gambia produce, for example? One example, give examples. And Spice Jata is saying, you're welcome. Straight Talk Elizabeth says Sam Jiba. Radamil Falcao is saying, well said, my dear sister. It seems as Elizabeth is winning the winning. And he says, well said, my dear sister. At times I used to feel so sad. We never produce anything. We only depend on loans. It is really so sad. Pao's charm is saying, if no one can give support to these young people, I will suggest you peace up. Ibrahim Sise is saying, no, not agree. And John S. Mendy, a good follower, is saying, what I don't understand is why after 50 years of independence, we still becoming more dependent. And Lamin Toure is saying our leaders are corrupt and we are lazy. Paul's charm is saying because of the narrow-minded people making silly comment here. That's why Chinese are coming to feed them with loads that they can never repeat. What is more educative than what they are talking about? And Radamel Fakao is saying only we, the youth of Africa, can develop Africa, not our greed and selfish leaders. Now is the time for we, the youth, to tighten our belts, and we must unite as one people and move forward. Thank you very much for the comments. And to Madam Elizabeth,
Doctor,
many a times, sorry, to Madam, yes, you want to contribute?
Yeah, I just want to two things about the comments. They're very good. We appreciate them coming on. Just to touch on two comments there. I think the viewers needs to know just putting together this platform, us coming together is a massive work, and we are doing it towards Gambia. So we are working for Gambia today because we're enlightening people, we're doing research and sharing. So that's working towards Gambia, not to mention the charities we are involved and other things. So that's one point to clarify. The suggestion of doing election sensitization in terms of voters, I think this is the right platform for it because I just want our viewers to know how diverse we are. Even though most of us have political affiliation, some of us don't, we are a very diverse group. Everybody here kind of speak 2 or 3 different languages. So that would come, the viewer that commented on that, because like President Barrow said, even though we don't mention, it's not election time, work time. So right now we're working. I think when it comes to nearer election, we're not going to leave it late. We will bring a program where we would educate our people in terms of making good choices in terms of voter and also electing the right people. And we would do it in all languages because here we all speak the main languages. We've got the Jolas, the Sarahules, the Manjagos, the Fulas. So we will get to there. So thanks for their wonderful comments. So I just thought maybe we could have tackled that one. Sorry, Doctor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bakari. And to Madam Elizabeth, we've seen that there is an increasing, influx of Chinese companies in Africa and in Gambia specific. We've seen an increase of their coming. But one thing common with these Chinese companies is that they don't just come, but they export their people to wherever they are. And when they export their people, they say they come with companies to, improve the status of Africa, to provide jobs and all those stuff. But if you look at it, when they come with their companies, they give the jobs, the good jobs to their people. That is like they're exporting their people, whatever they do. And those jobs that are, the minimum jobs or the domestic jobs are the ones that they give to the locals. Do you think this is, employment, provision for the locals, or do you think it is employment opportunities for the local, for the host of these companies?
I mean, absolutely not. I mean, and again, it goes back to what are the terms of the contract? What did they agree with our governments? Because if we have the manpower, why would you bring in, your own people from China to do the work that our own, sons and daughters can do? So, it just goes to say that these people are not there for our interest, as they're there for their own interest first and foremost, which is understandable. But the people that are supposed to be there for us to fight to make sure that we get a fair deal of this from these projects, they are not there for us. They are there for their pockets. The Chinese will give them $1 million or $2 million, and then, you know, all these other things that they are supposed to make sure and ensure that we have, like jobs that Gambians would secure from these projects. They sacrifice those for the little millions that they will get in their pocket. So obviously, it's not a good thing for us. And two other things that I want to highlight about the negative impact or the bad aspect of Chinese investment. One, we are already seeing firsthand the environment, and Plex went on a great detail on that. So the environment, we have seen firsthand how the fish, our seas have been polluted. We have seen firsthand how the sea is just washing up that sea from the seas. And Flex talked about the fact that there are tests have been done and carcinogenic agents have been seen in our seas for the first time because of the pollution that is going on in there. And again, you wonder, what kind of contract did these people sign with our governments where they can do this, this to our environment? They can put a pipe into the river and dump waste in there. What kind of contract did they sign? Who are these people that are signing this contract? What do they know about? Where is the NEA, the National Environment Agency? How much have they done to deter this thing? So all of these things goes to show up the corruption that is in our country, where these people come and bribe our leaders, and some of the things that they are supposed to ensure they have the checks and balances are not there because they have filled their mouths with money. The second aspect we need to look at is the barter system that we see that comes with Chinese investment, where they invest in they give you loans, and then if you fail to pay those loans, they take key infrastructures from you. They take key, organizations from you, money making bodies from you, like we see in Zambia, where they're wanting to take their airport or wanting to take their national electricity company. This is a system that we have seen, and we as a country, we cannot afford these loans from China. Look at our standing is loan, our loan standing. Is it 130% to our GDP?
Yeah.
That is crazy. So there is no way that we can take these huge loans from China and then be able to repay them. So we will end up like Zambia. We will be ending up like we're seeing in all these other countries that you guys have mentioned and researched on. That is where we are. Sri Lanka. That is where we are going to be ended with our debt standing. But China doesn't care. China doesn't look for those things. It doesn't look at your credit report to say, oh, where does your economy stand? Are you able to repay these loans? No, because they know. In fact, they don't want you to be able to repay those loans, because once you default, they take your port. Imagine they take our port from us. Imagine that.
That is to say that China is on a colonization mission. They want to take over Africa. When the more they owe, assets in African countries, the more, sovereign they become in those countries. And with time, respective countries will lose their sovereignty. But there's something I want to make. Yes, there's something I want to say. It's like
it goes again to the sovereignty that we were talking about, that when they give these loans, they do not go into our day-to-day policies and politics and determine how we run our countries, what policies we adopt and what policies we do not adopt. They do not go into in the initial stage. But again, there is another way in which we are losing our sovereignty to them, where they take up these things from us. They take your port from you. They take the airport from you. They take, your key infrastructures from you. When they do that, then where is sovereignty? You still have lost your sovereignty in another way. Just like we are claiming that the West is interfering in our sovereignty when they give us these loans. So we need to be very careful. They are very subtle in the way they come, but again, it's the kind of leaders we have. They cannot negotiate. They do not have the brains to do it. The manpower is not there. The intellectuals that are supposed to be doing these things are either corrupted, or we do not have intellectuals to do it, especially in the Gambia. Look at our key, government places. Who are these people manning these places? You wonder, are they qualified enough? When I saw that roundtable discussion where China was on this side and our people on this side, I saw Ahmad Ba, I was like, who takes Ahmad Ba to such a,
If my uncle wrote.
you know, who such kind of people, you take them to a deal with China to talk, terms and of loans and all that. I mean, they would kill us. They would chew us raw. So, I mean, let's look at the leaders we are voting in, as the commentator wrote. We need to put in leaders in place who understand political, who understand, these things and are able to represent us well.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. To the viewers, if you're just joining us, this is your favorite platform called The Common Good, where we educate, inform, and advocate for the betterment of the Gambia as a country and Gambians as a people. And on the discussion tonight, we're discussing about the increasing Chinese involvement in Africa, Gambia specific. What are the goods of their increasing investment in Africa? And what are the bads of their increasing interest in Africa? And to the comment, Mr. Lamin Tamba is saying, we are returning to the days of slavery, where it was claimed for thieves told us to slave masters or traders in the West. And Mr. Paesa is saying that the truth is Africa is the platform for geopolitical influence between the US and China. And this is very true. This is very true because if you look at the Western mainstream media, they know that there is increasing interest of China in Africa. So to reduce that influence or to give an obstacle to that influence, they're tagging exploitation to it when they themselves are using Africa as a breeding ground. So it is very true. And Mr. Tamba is saying that let's blame our own leaders, not China. Mr. John S. Mendy is saying that good point, Mr. Tamba. And Mr. Toure is saying they are all proud. They are all proud to make business in Africa. It's like free zone for them, really. And Nicholas Bass is saying it is very interesting that a lot of leaders in the West want to visit the Gambia because Gambia got all oil and gas. Thank you very much to the viewers and welcome. Seisao is saying that I came late. Thank you, and keep following and inform your friends and colleagues. And I want to say something. The reason what I see with the increasing interest of Chinese involvement in Africa is because we do not have good leaders. We do not have smart leaders. And they realize that, we do not have smart leaders. We do not have good leaders. We have leaders that, will think of what they will have than what the country has. So it's easy to give the leaders what they will have than giving the country what it needs. So in that, they come and influence our leaders, manipulate them, and then at the end of the day, get into our resources, and do what they want to do. And also the other thing I realize is that we do not have good legislations in Africa, Gambia specific, with regards to the issue of golden lead. The NEA made, 2 golden lead to court. But we realized that at the end of the day, what happened? The government's influence made the court as, the case out of court and, ended up it being an out of court settlement. That is like in the Chinese and the community of Gunjur discussing outdoors and seeing how they could settle these things. So it's like the Chinese are using our government against our people, and that translates to what had happened with regards to golden lead. So what do you think, ladies and gentlemen? What do you think our people in general should do or pressurize our governments to ensure that the bad effect of this increasing interest reduces? It doesn't lead to the issue or scenario wherein our people in years to come will suffer because these companies, the agents that they use to rinse their materials, the agents that they use to clean their machines, they stay long in the soil, they stay long in the waters, long years to come. Several years to come, these waters, when we drink them, it is not going to affect us today, but several years to come, in decades to come, we will develop issues, we will develop problems. And this could lead to cancerous, diseases. It could lead to the development of cancer and many other, as we see in the Western world, where industrialization has increased the burden of cancer. And it could be a problem in Africa. Imagine in Gambia, where people struggle to get the little, money for funds to go to the hospital. If there is an increasing burden of cancer in Africa or in Gambia specific, How will we manage that situation? How will we manage that situation? So it is to say that we need to make sure that we pressurize our governments today to ensure that these effects do not increase to the state at which it will affect our people in years to come. What do you think, Bakari, we need to do? What do you think we should suggest to our governments? How do we pressurize our local authorities, our MPs, our councillors, our governors, and our president, to make sure that whatever he signs, it be for the good of Gambia, not him and not China, but for the good of Gambians, so that years to come we will remember him as a good leader, as a leader that has done good for Gambia. What do you think?
Thank you, Doctor. If you may allow me before I answer your question, if I can just say one or two things for 2 seconds, and then I'll come and answer your wonderful question. Africa is not poor. Africa is poorly managed. And that's down to exactly what your question you just asked in terms of leadership and stuff like that. During colonial time, this is funny. This is what happened. When Her Majesty people come over there to colonize most of Africa and stuff, they came with salt and sugar. And then our great-grand ancestors were fooled into testing this salt and sugar. And they're like, oh, that tastes really nice. And our ancestors were paying our colonial masters then with our golds and diamonds. What happened to our golds and diamonds? They are all in these big banks reserve now, either in the FedEx in America or in the Bank of England here. Yeah, that's how they exploited us before. Now, this is a strategy different to what the Chinese are doing. The Chinese know now the natural resources that they need in terms of making mobile phones and all other sorts to develop other countries. Africa have it. They've exhausted theirs. The West doesn't have it. China doesn't have it. We have it. So what they're doing now, they're doing something similar to what the Brits used to do when during the colonial time. They're targeting our officials by corrupting them, by paying them bribes, by giving them a short-term change of life, which is nice and good. But these leaders, what they need to realize is they are parents, they got children, they're going to get grandchildren. Their short-term benefit today could affect their generations of families to come. So now, to answer your question, what we need to do, we need to start looking at the leaders that we have in place. And right now, okay, we've elected someone which we might not rightly agree is doing good or not. And I would say my opinion is they're failing us. But what is our legislature doing? Because they are our representatives. They should be asking government, or they should be summoning ministers or even the president to ask questions on our behalf. They're not doing that. I think the reason why they're not doing that is because of those 57 trucks. They somehow cannot talk now. So for me, as a citizen, it starts from my MP. We need to apply pressure on our local representatives. So you are there for our interests. This is happening. I want you to speak about it and ask questions. And then we pressurize them, because right now, our legislature is not holding the executive to task. They're signing deals which are not even scrutinized at our House of Parliament. And these people are our representative. So the executive is not putting the interests of the Gambians at heart. The people that we elect directly to represent our interests, they're not putting them to task. So we are in a tricky situation in the Gambia, because we are being failed by the executive, and somehow, I'm not going to label them all, but most of our legislature, because it would be unfair to some who we all know they are fighting day and night there to put the interests of Gambia. So we as Gambians, we as citizens, we need to start talking, we need to start applying pressure, we need to be speaking to the right people and make the right noises at the right time. Because if not, 100% loan capital, that means you, I, Elizabeth, and anyone who is watching us today, we have on our heads more than $20,000 of loan that we have to pay.
Thank you very much, Bakari. Spice Jata is saying, you so expose my sister, my dear sister Elizabeth. Keep it up. And Wada Hotans is saying, I don't think our sovereignty is really part of our current government's agenda. And Jugle Newtaho is saying that I want to contribute, but I need a meeting ID. Yes, Jugle Newtaho, we're gonna share the meeting ID in 5 minutes so that you can come in and contribute. Mr. Nicholas Bars is saying, I'm not hearing Paus. Paus is at the back. Thank you very much. This has got us to the point of taking in callers for the second segment of the discussion, which is the negative impacts of increasing Chinese involvement in Africa. It is open, so whoever wants to contribute, you can come in and contribute.
Yeah, whilst we're waiting for people to call in, I think Powers can put in the numbers that people can use to call. Powers is the background working.
Yes.
So yeah, if you send those numbers, Powers, so people can call in. I want to buttress the point that whilst we are waiting, if I may,
Okay.
buttress Bakari's point on the National Assembly. I mean, it is frightening when I hear. I know we're not talking about FAR. We'll have a FAR energy deal. We have a special topic for that. That such in 40 days time, now I think it's 37 days time, these people will be drilling oil in our country, but the National Assembly is not aware. It is so frightening. You begin to wonder, what? How can that be possible? How can that even be legal? And will lead people. I'm sorry, guys. I need.
Yes, Bakari, can you take up?
Yeah, so it's just like we said, we can sit down here and scrutinize the Chinese and all that, but they are there for their own interest. They are there to progress China and stuff like that. We as Gambians, we as Africans, including our leaders, we should also protect our sovereign interests, which is things that would prosper us, things that would not affect us for the long term. And I think right now, it's a win-win situation more for China than we ever get back, apart from few countries that are having smart leaders that are putting in hard bargaining in the place. Because if you come to me and you want something from me, I should dictate the narrative. I should control the kind of like the discussion around there. But what is happening right now, China is dictating the space, they are dictating the agreement and stuff like that. And that's not benefiting. So, we need to find a solution where at the end of the day, I am the seller, we are the seller, they are the buyer. We sell at a price that we think the value, it matches the value of our commodity. Right now, the Chinese are even dictating the price of buying our own commodity, which for me is just, it's nonsense in a way to say it. I don't think we've got any caller. It seems like Elizabeth have joined us back. If Elizabeth wanna
Yeah,
add
so I just want to add
Yeah.
something to. Okay, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I think, the point I was trying to make was just to buttress the point that Bakar had already made about the National Assembly. We need their involvement. The National Assembly is not just made of Halifa Saleh. That's the only name and few others that you hear every time. Where are the rest? What are they doing? We need to hear them. This is so. Can you hear me?
They've got
Yeah,
the
we're
trucks.
getting you.
They've got the trucks in
We're
their
getting
mouths.
you.
Oh, okay. The 57. They've got the 57 vehicles in their mouth, so they cannot talk. I get it. So I mean, Gambia, we need to wake up. We need to get leaders out there who will work for our interests, who will work for your interests. Taking people in there that will just, eat money and just go to bed and sleep, and because they are from the same tribe with you, what do you gain from it? What do you gain from that? So we need to rise beyond that and look beyond that, because at the end of the day, it's going to affect us, our children, and our children's children. Now, if these the National Assembly members, like, they are failing us to put the checks and balances that need to be in place to ensure that these investors do not come and cripple us, if they are not doing it, how does that benefit you as a Manjago, that a Manjago is a National Assembly member? How does that benefit you that you are a Fuller and that National Assembly member is a Fuller? It doesn't. It doesn't benefit you. It doesn't benefit your children. It doesn't benefit your children's children. So we need to look beyond these trivial things and elect people who will represent us and represent us well. National Environment Agency, where are they? You cannot imagine that a company like Golden Lead will operate. They do not have a waste processing plant, and they are still given a license to operate. What is the National Environment Agency doing? So these are questions that we as Gambians should ask and put these leaders to task bring them out, put their feet on the fire. Let them tell us why they are being paid our monies. They are receiving huge money. They're receiving huge salaries for what? Just to go and sleep or go and receive more bribes? And we are okay with that because they are from the same region with us, or they are from the same clan or tribe with us? Come on, we need to do better. We need to be patriotic. We need to have a love for our country. We need to show that we love our country and we want the best for our country. And the only way we can do that is by looking over these tribalistic tendencies that we have, moving beyond that, and looking for competent, able leaders to run our country.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. I, as a person, consider the National Assembly the highest disciplinary, body of our country, in the sense that it is the body that is responsible in ensuring that whatever our government does, which is the executive per se, does, is in the good interest of the citizenry. And it also ensures that the laws that our country enact are for the benefit of our country. But once our legislators do not see that house as a disciplinary house, as a house that should ensure that the right things are done for the betterment of Gambians, then it will become a problem, because they will not get in the right laws. They will not be in position to tell the executive that you should do this, you shouldn't do that. They will not be in a position to know what to accept from the executive and what not to accept from the executive. So it is about time that our people, our legislators, know that they are not there as just representatives, but they are there as legislators. They are there as disciplinarians for the executive and for the country, as large, at large. Because when issues arise, like for example, when issues of hate speech and all those stuff come up, it is the legislators that will sit and say, yes, it's about time that we get something that will make sure that this thing doesn't go beyond how beyond how it should be, where it should stop. And that alone is a disciplinary measure to ensure that things are done the right way. But once legislators don't see that, once they see that they are sitting there as to represent political parties or to represent individuals, then it becomes a problem. So we're still waiting for callers. Looks like somebody joined us. Is it Paus?
Yes, and also we have another person. He's gone.
You can please accept the person.
Yeah. I just want to mangi diklu, but Munumanyaka call mentioned this point about the National Assembly and scrutinizing the government. I think recently we all could admit the fact that the Gambia National Assembly at this point of time is not the strongest we've ever had in the Gambia. And one could say it's a very, very average. I don't mean to offend anybody, but the kind of National Assembly members we have now, since they've been elected, all they've been doing were ratifying international treaties, ratifying papers that has to do with Gambia, and that has nothing to do with the immediate need and problem of this country. I can't imagine a country as big as the Gambia, an independent country with a government with the 3 arms of legislation, 3 arms of government, i.e. legislation, the judiciary, and the cabinet. The government still go behind closed doors and have these things, have these contracts signed without Parliament looking at it, scrutinizing it, and weighing up whether is it national interest versus the investors' interest. So our National Assembly, we want answers. We want you to ask government, otherwise the whole 1.8 million people can't go and protest at the State House. It becomes a violent, peaceful protest in the end. We want the 53 National Assembly members in that house to start waking up, to start asking this government, why are these investors coming? What do they bring? Let's put it on a scale whereby we have the Gambia and the investor. We see which one weighs more. Everything that the Gambia has to go into is the duty of National Assembly to make sure is in the best interest of the country. And the Gambia is not losing. Yes, we used to say that nobody is a loser, nobody is a winner, but we don't care about the other party. We care about what we stand to gain as a nation, what we stand to gain as a people. And likewise, the Gambia economy needs reviving. That doesn't mean we have to go and sell Gambia to anybody else. So the National Assembly at this point of time, I think they've been very, very lenient. with government. They have to hit hard on government. We have a National Assembly whereby the speaker controls the narratives. The speaker can stop you. This is not what we call Gambia. You know,
I think there's a caller.
Yeah, but thank you. I will let you get the caller.
Before you get the caller, I just want to read some of the comments. Mr. Patrick Malak is saying that an MP was riding a bicycle and now driving a car. What will he or she say to the government? And Nicholas Bass is saying good point. And Gabriel Gomez wants to call from the UK. Lamin Toure is saying, but what do you really think that the National Environment Agency should do? And Bovino is watching with us. Thank you. Keep following. Inform your friends. Yes, can we accept the caller, please?
Yeah, hello. Is that for me, Julian House? Hello? Hello?
Yes. Welcome to the program. Can you please introduce yourself and where you're calling from?
Okay, my name is Gabriel Gomez. I'm calling from in the UK.
Hello, Uncle Gabu.
Yes,
welcome, Uncle Gabu. Welcome to your program.
Please, yes, thank you. Yes, Liz Bass. In fact, I happen to live in the same city with Madeline Mendy. I think in your platform. Thank you very much. I commend you guys for setting up this platform. It's very, very good, and I have been following you guys. I think you touched on some issues today. I think is the issue of Chinese involvement in Africa and Gambia, for that matter. Okay.
Uncle, can you please raise your voice?
Oh, okay. So I'm just saying, I think your topic is the Chinese involvement in Africa or Gambia, for that matter. Is that the case? Is that the topic of discussion today? Okay, that's fine. Okay, that's fine. It's a very, very interesting topic. So what I have to say here, if you look at the African continent and the Gambia in particular, the reason why we don't always win, because if you negotiate in a contract, it should be on the basis of win-win situation. And the point is, if you look at the Gambia here, the problem we have in the Gambia, because if you are a nation which depend on importing 90% of what you need, you have a problem. Because a nation, how do you make money? You have to export your products. And what do we export in the Gambia? Anytime we need anything in the Gambia, we need to build a bridge. Who do you bring in? You bring in foreigners. We don't have the expertise. These are the problems affecting African countries. Because when they left us, or we say we got independent, because we are not yet capable of doing things with our own hands. You need to build a bridge. Let's say that bridge of Saro and connecting Serekunda. If that one has to go, who do you bring in? You bring in foreigners. And sometimes, always, I understand if the Chinese come to Africa, it's for their own vested interest. So, like you take Gambian, for example, we came here also for our interest. But always, when we negotiate with people, and the reason why we don't always win, because where do you stand? You go to the Chinese, and the Chinese come sometimes anyway. What this guy said, I think, is it Bakari? Because they have the upper hand, and they dictate the narrative. These are the problems that we Africans or we Gambia, we get as a problem. I understand you people when you say, the National Assembly. The National Assembly, I was speaking to an MP here. Sometimes things are even done in the Gambia, the National Assembly, the Parliament, they don't even know. So what's going on in the country? We have a problem here. People are not listening because if we do listen and the leadership listen, I think most of the things will fall right in place. Anyway, I thank you guys. I don't want to take most of the time because I might try to come back again if you let me in, if there is an opportunity for me to come back. But with the Chinese, something got to be done. Look at what's happening in Gujur. Most of the Chinese, when they come to Africa, like in the Gambia, what they're doing in Gambia, there is an environmental issue there. And that problem should be addressed. it should be addressed because most of these foreign companies coming, they don't care. All they care for is, to have big, fat bank accounts. But if our leaders are not listening, sometimes, okay, you say the Barrow government is this. People think you hate Barrow. You don't hate Barrow. Sometimes leadership, the people need to listen. So once the leaders, they don't listen to the people, there is a problem. And they don't seem to listen. So what are we going to do?
That's right.
Anyway, that's my little contribution I have to make. Thank you very much, and thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Can I come in?
Thank you, Uncle
very much, Uncle Gabu. Thank you very much.
I'm on the
Madam Elizabeth and Mr. Bakari, you've heard what Uncle Gabu has said, and it's more or less a follow-up to what you said. So what do you have to add to that, Bakari?
Doctor,
hello.
I think we've got another caller. Let's take the caller first, please. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, welcome. Can you please introduce yourself and where you calling us from?
I'm calling from the U.S. I'm juggling Utah. I believe that the Chinese-African problem. Hello?
Yeah, hello, we're hearing you.
We
the
getting you.
Chinese-African problem or the Chinese-Gambian problem is not the fault of the leaders. I don't think it's the leaders who are the problem. I think it's the design that is flawed. Now, if you look at these leaders, my belief is if you take the United States Senate, you take that leadership, you transpose it into Gambia, it will still do or fail. Because the way the African countries were designed from the very jump start, they were designed to do what they are doing today. The designers of the African countries, they took time and they spent a lot of energy studying and understand the psyche of the African. When they figured it out, then they laid out the design that should last for hundreds of years. It is when we as Africans decide that we are going to change that design, that's when we are going to start seeing changes or improvement. If we don't change that design, then I think we should just continue, just getting by. That's what we are trying to do. So all these African governments, we are just trying to get by. Because if we go to meetings with this Chinese or any international company or country, we are coming to the negotiating table without leverage. If you go to the negotiating table without the leverage as a businessman, you would always get the downside of the deal. So the Africans, we have to decide at some point that our 5 years or short-term needs should be, all right, let's try and get back, just get through. But our long-term, 5 years or 10 years beyond, is how do we change the formula that we have. But we keep on insisting it's our country, and everybody is gung-ho jumping out their national independent state. I mean, we've been doing this for 53 years, but it's not going nowhere. 53 years, 53 African countries, none of them have figured it out. Something got to be wrong. All right, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for the call. You've made very excellent points. I'm so Bakari and Elizabeth, you've heard what the caller said. There is more needed to be done to make sure that good comes out of all this increasing involvement. Bakari, can you make a review of what the caller has just said?
Thank you, Doctor. The caller had made some good points. I entirely agree, apart from one which I politely or respectfully differ a little bit. I think it's a leadership problem because these systems that he said, are flawed. That's why we vote those leaders in to come and address those systems and to bring in systems that are not flawed, where we don't get exploited. And if you look at our dealings with the Chinese or any other external investors, it's these leaders that sit on our behalf and do those investments. So the problems we're facing I would say majority of them is to do with leaders and leadership. There is two different things there. Leadership is the structure, and the leaders are the ones, the human beings that does that decision. So right now, like you rightly said, we don't have the leadership structure to have a leverage on the table when we're doing these dealings. But that's where the leaders needs to come in and be smart and put those leadership structures in place so that when they sit down on the negotiating table, that leverage is there because we got it. They want it from us. If we are not happy with what they're paying for it, we keep it until a proper buyer comes in. So I would leave Elizabeth just to touch on that, but that's my take on it.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you on that point, Bakari. It's the problem of leadership. Our leaders have failed us. I mean, like you said, it's not like what we have is not good enough. I mean, that's why they are coming. They want it. They need it. In fact, they need it like they need it. So, I mean, if they need it, why are they having it based on their terms alone? Why do they have the leverage? We are not playing our cards right, and that is why they're exploiting us. And it goes back to the leadership. Nobody's pointing a gun on their heads to, I mean, take these deals, but they are doing it, and mostly because most times they are being corrupted. They are backdoor deals that are being signed. Why aren't you bringing these deals to the National Assembly if it's all clean and nothing to hide? Why would you keep it from a body like the National Assembly? Why would if it's not a leadership problem, why would the National Environment Agency? Somebody asked, one of our viewers asked, what does the National Environment Agency have to do? Of course, they have a lot to do. They have risk assessments to do when these projects come in place to see how much damage such projects will have on our environment. They should be able to make those assessments without bias, and make recommendations and ensure that these investors abide by those regulations before even they start. Case in point, the Golden Lead one, where the Golden Lead factory doesn't have a waste management plant, and they're still giving a license. Who does that? In what world? Only in Africa, where leaders take money and their mouths are sealed. Because if they do not have a waste production plant, they should not get a license. Point blank. Period. I mean, these are things that are that only leadership can take care of. So basically, it's good to hear that caller. He's made very great contributions. But like you said, I do also respectfully disagree on him on that point. Our leaders have failed us, and we need to hold them at task. We need to ensure that our leaders do what is right by us. When they fail, we have to call them out. And I keep emphasizing this point. Just because you are from the same political party with this leader, or you're from the same tribe with this leader, and they are messing up, doesn't mean you should be quiet about it. You should not be comfortable about it, because at the end of the day, you are mortgaging your future. You're mortgaging your children's future. You're mortgaging a whole country just to please one person because they're from the same political party with you, or they're from the same region, or they're from the same tribe with you. We need to do better. We need to show that we love our country. Why don't they have the same issues with the West? Of course, in countries like America and US, it's not. They have foreign investment. Investors come from, outside their countries to invest. But on whose terms? On what terms? They have leaders who ensure that they have organizations that ensure that when these investors come, they stick by, what is right for their countries. So
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Nationalism before regionalism or ethnicity, and with
Gambian
that,
pride.
Gambia will move forward.
We need to enforce that Gambian pride. We need to be proud of our Gambia.
I think we've got a
last call. So from the readers, followers rather, Patrick Malak is saying education is the key, and Lamin Sedi is saying nothing is to export. John S. Mendy is saying great point, my brother, speaking from the UK. The problem is our leaders, and Lamin Sedi is saying no education in the national, just A, Mandinka, B, Jula, and Siwala. John S. Mendy is saying there is no guarantee for Chinese products, so Gambia, wake up, please. And Nicholas Bars is saying louder backs. Lamin Toure is saying you the problem of Gambians. You all see my mistake, but none of you rectify me. But instead, education is the key. John S. Mendy is saying the National Assembly may throw about all what is going on, but remember they are all corrupt. And the Wolof said, "Lune dudoy," whatever is sweet is not enough. And we've got to a point that the time is betraying us. So on that, we need to review what we have discussed. We've spoke a lot about the positives of Chinese involvement, the negative of Chinese involvement in Africa. And I want Bakari to give me a summary of what he thinks our government, our legislators, our governors, our councillors, and our people should do to reduce the effects of Chinese involvement in Africa, or in Gambia, sorry, just 5 minutes.
Thank you, Doctor. If I may, if I can just give this caller maybe 1 minute of my time. If he's been there for like nearly 5-10 minutes, if we could just take him as the last caller, and then I could do my quick summary. So, caller, sorry, if you could just introduce yourself and tell us where you're calling from, then I'll come in.
Okay. Hello?
Yeah, hello, this is me again. I still think you guys misinterpreted when I said we as African leaders are going in there, our countries are going in there without leverage. Now, what I mean by leverage, without leverage, when an African country goes to negotiate with the Chinese, the African country is going without anything to bring on the table. Not really. They're bringing some resources to the table. But that resource will remain undeveloped for infinity. For the most part, for example, Gambia, the oil has been there for the past 50 years or even more. It was known to be there at least 20 or more years. It would have continued to be there like that. The Chinese know that. Now, how do the other African countries, how would they be able to have leverage if they're coming from the same position as Gambian country? Everybody's coming to the table without bringing in, what should I say? If the Chinese says we're not going to deal with Gambia, but Senegal has oil, and Gambia has been very difficult, we are going to go to Senegal. Now, if Senegal is doing the same thing, they said, okay, we're going to behave like Gambia. They will go to Mauritania. They will continue to go around and around and around until they find somebody that they can work with. That is what I meant by leverage. African countries do not have any choice. They do not have another option. Therefore, they will take whatever comes to them. Now, to change that equation around, then the African countries need to find ways to pull their resources together through regionalization or through the bigger picture, which is unification or what Pan-Africanism is. And then you begin to have leverage. Because you cannot go to the table to negotiate with these international capitalists and you expect them to give you charity or you expect them to give you a good deal. They are not going to do that. It doesn't work like that. If you come into the negotiating table, you bring something to the table. And when you bring something to the table, hello?
Yeah.
Huh? When you bring something to the table, you have to have an other option. But we don't have the other option in case you said that's not a good deal. All we have to do is walk away and we'll continue to be poor. And we've done that since independence, which is about 50-something years. So I don't think that's why I say it's not the leader's fault. It is the design that is flawed. The design, what I mean, the 53 independent African states, is the flawed design of our problem. So we will continue to do this it will continue like this for infinity because it was a built-in flaw that was put into the 53 independent African states to do what it is doing today. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much for the call. Yes, Bakari.
Thank you, Doctor. I'm going to be very brief. It's been a wonderful program, and myself, I've learned quite a lot, and you've moderated very well today. Just to wrap up, to be quite honest, I'll remind us one thing that happened. That's what the Chinese do. They help us build this African Union headquarters, and they bought the headquarters itself. So their way of dealing things is always saggy. It's always dodgy, and it's always unorthodox. So it's just about us being smart in terms of our dealing. Like the last call I've just said, the system is flawed. We know that. It's entirely cannot be our African leaders, but we cannot just sit down and say the system is flawed. We have to start doing something about it. And there is some African countries that are getting good deal out of China, i.e. Rwanda, Ghana, and Senegal. So we as Africans and our African leaders, maybe they need to adopt those countries' approach to do with the Chinese. Maybe learn something from there. Or those three countries need to share it with the other African countries. And our leaders, as soon as or as long as they put the national interest before their short-term interest, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. But the unfortunate reality is our leaders right now, most of them are just there to line up their pockets, and they don't worry too much about what's going to happen in the future, which could affect their own children and their grandchildren. So let's put our countries first before our political party, our leaders, our tribe. On that note, I want to thank everybody for watching. It's been a pleasure having Echo on this platform.
Thank you very much, Bakari. Gambia first, as we always say. Madam Elizabeth, what is your last word with regards to what we have discussed, the positives and negatives of Chinese involvement in Africa, Gambia specific? What do you have to say to the Gambian people, to our legislators, to our government executive, and to the president with regards to this increasing interest for the good of Gambia?
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Tex. I mean, the point is we cannot live in isolation. We need foreign investment, there is no doubt. But we need good investors. We need, terms and conditions that are favorable to us too. It should be a win-win situation for parties involved. So, our government should do better. They can do better. And we as a people can hold our governments to task. We have seen time and again where government officials are bribed and corrupted by these investors. Monies, Equatorial Guinea was just on the news the other, just weeks ago, where we saw, the vice president, who happens to be the son or the son-in-law of the president, how much money he has in the West, how much, a lot of a luxurious life he's living there, where investors are not putting in the monies that they're getting from the businesses they're running in these countries, but rather putting these monies into private accounts, bank accounts of politicians and government officials. So we see all these things happening, and it's our leaders that are failing us. But if we just sit by and watch and say nothing, and it continues, and our future continues to be stolen away from us. Our children's future continue to be taken away from us. We deserve better. What we have in the West here, we can have in Africa, if only we as a people demand better. Put Gambia first. Put our tribal tendencies aside and look at that flag and desire that the Gambia will be where all these other countries are. And call our leaders, the National Assembly especially, the National Assembly, you are failing us big time because you are there for a reason. When the government is failing, at least we would think that the National Assembly will step in and ensure that Chinese or the West or whoever do not exploit us the way they do. They cannot be having contracts and investing in a country when you as a body that is supposed to be putting up those checks and balances are not there to do that. It is frightening. I am afraid. I am scared for us. I don't know where the next 3 years is going to take us, but I am scared for us because of the kind of leadership that we have. We do not have capable and competent leaders, and so when they go for these, meetings, you wonder what they are trying. You wonder what contracts they are taking, and how much detriment that is to us and to our children and to our country. So we need the new Gambians. We need to wake up. We need to ask more questions and have these people account. for these things that they are doing behind the scenes.
Thank you
You.
very much, Elizabeth. Thank you very much. Just to read make our last read of the comment. Wada Hotams is saying that great panel and brilliant analysis. Thank you all. Gabriel Garment is saying you are right. In most cases, African nations do not have a choice. Do not have a choice. It is with a choice with take us a long time and to have a level playing field. And Wada Hotans again is saying great point and brilliant analysis. Thank you all. Lamin Toure is saying respect to all the panelists and thank you for the enlightenment. John S. Mendy is saying Gambia first would have been great if our leaders think the same way. And Nicholas Vaz is saying I disagreed with the last caller. We don't have to allow them because Thomas Sankara says no to France and he makes his country better. Thank you very much to all the viewers. It's been a great pleasure to have you all as panelists and also to the viewers for following us. We have a country to build. We have a country to remodel, and we have a country that we need to make sure that and we build it to a state that generations to come will be happy of what we do for them. And on that note, it was your platform, The Common Good. And we had a discussion about the increasing Chinese influence in Africa and it's bad. Look forward to upcoming programs that will come your way from the same people and from the same platform. On that note, I say thank you very much for watching and thank you to the panelists for taking your time and contribute towards the development of Gambia. It was from me, Mohamed X Dikanye, as moderator, and have a pleasant night. Bye-bye. Good day. Bye. Thank you.
You've been placed on hold. Please wait.
Among intellectuals, the international platform on whether the China was genuine in its commitment to help Africa develop. But recent events have suggested that the cooperation between China and Africa is not necessarily without pitfalls. And over the media, we have seen many cases of the Chinese labor issues involving the Chinese. And I think there could be an attempt by the Chinese to try and reassure Africa that what is happening that is negative is really not the major focus of this cooperation.
Victor Gao, Premier Lee says the relationship with African trading partners is based on equality and mutual benefit, but is it?
Well, first of all, from the Chinese perspective, Africa is important both politically and economically. Now, on the political front, China treats all the African countries as equals, regardless of their sizes, regardless of whether they have resources or not, and regardless how much is their bilateral trade with China. On the economic front, of course, China has been investing in Africa many decades, and this is way before many European or other developed countries have come back to Africa. Africa, for many of the Western countries, has been the forgotten continent for many decades. And also, I would say, countries like the United States and many European countries have the historical liability because they either have